What if I told you that Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein isn't just a beautiful retelling of Mary Shelley's classic, but an authentic guide to Thelemic magic, alchemical transformation, and the spiritual journey from damnation to redemption that reveals the deepest occult teachings about creation, consciousness, and divine forgiveness? I'm about to take you deeper into the shadows than most film analysts dare to go. While other channels give you surface-level analysis about gothic horror and visual effects, occult cinema reveals the genuine esoteric knowledge that filmmakers embed in their work. Just like Victor Frankenstein discovered the secret of life through forbidden knowledge, you're about to learn that Del Toro has embedded authentic spiritual teachings about free will, shadow work, and the ultimate power of forgiveness to transform even the most damned souls. I'm your host, Mad Murphys, and these are 10 shocking occult secrets hidden in Del Toro's Frankenstein that will completely change how you understand this masterpiece of spiritual cinema. Secret number 1. Choice is the seed of the soul. When Elizabeth speaks the profound line, "Choice is the seed of the soul," she's expressing one of the most fundamental debates in occult philosophy: whether human consciousness has genuine free will or is bound by divine predestination. This quote directly references the Hermetic principle that consciousness creates reality through the choices it makes. In Hermetic teaching, the soul's evolution depends entirely on the decisions it makes when faced with moral and spiritual challenges. But here's what's really incredible. This theme runs through every version of Frankenstein differently. In Mary Shelley's original novel, both Victor and the creature are trapped by their natures and circumstances, suggesting a more deterministic universe. The 1931 film presents the monster as a victim of circumstance with little agency. Del Toro's version, however, emphasizes that both Victor and the creature have the power to choose redemption over revenge, forgiveness over hatred. This reflects a more modern understanding of spiritual development that places responsibility squarely on individual consciousness. Victor's obsession with creating life represents what occultists call spiritual possession, when consciousness becomes so fixated on a particular goal that it loses the ability to make free choices. His prayers and visions show him seeking divine guidance, but his actions reveal he's already surrendered his will to his obsession. The creature's journey demonstrates the opposite. Despite being created without choice, he develops the capacity for moral decision-making through education and experience. His final choice to save the ship rather than seek revenge shows the soul's ultimate freedom to transcend its origins. Elizabeth's wisdom about choice being the seed of the soul suggests that authentic spiritual development requires taking full responsibility for our decisions, rather than blaming circumstances, creators, or divine will for our condition. Secret number 2. The subtitle. The modern Prometheus reveals the true occult meaning. Mary Shelley's original subtitle, The Modern Prometheus, isn't just literary reference. It reveals that Frankenstein is actually a retelling of the most important myth in Western occultism about stealing divine knowledge and facing the consequences. In Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, bringing both enlightenment and terrible punishment. He was chained to a rock where an eagle ate his liver daily, only for it to regenerate each night for eternal torment. Victor Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus. He steals the divine power of creation, the spark of life itself, and uses it to animate dead matter. The lightning that powers his experiments represents the same stolen fire that Prometheus brought to humanity. But here's what's really profound. Each version of Frankenstein interprets the Promethean myth differently. Shelley's novel presents it as a philosophical tragedy about the limits of human knowledge. The 1931 film turns it into horror about the dangers of playing God. Del Toro's version reveals the deepest occult meaning. Prometheus wasn't just a thief, but a light bringer whose gift to humanity was worth the suffering it caused. The creature represents both the blessing and curse of divine knowledge made manifest in the material world. The fire that Prometheus stole corresponds to what Gnostic Christians called the divine spark, the aspect of consciousness that connects human souls to their divine source. Victor's creation of the creature represents the awakening of this spark in artificial form. The punishment aspect appears in Victor's guilt and the creature's suffering, but Del Toro's version suggests that this suffering serves a spiritual purpose. It leads both creator and creation toward the wisdom and compassion that justify the original theft of divine power. The most incredible aspect is that the creature becomes a Prometheus figure himself, bringing the fire of consciousness and moral choice to a world that fears and rejects him, ultimately serving humanity despite their hatred. Secret number 3. Victor's prayers and angelic visions show Thelemic magic. Victor's prayers and visions of angelic figures throughout the film aren't just religious imagery, they're demonstrating authentic Thelemic magical practice, specifically the invocation of what Aleister Crowley called the Holy Guardian Angel. In Thelemic tradition, The HGA represents the divine aspect of individual consciousness that guides the soul toward its true spiritual purpose. Achieving knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel is considered the fundamental goal of magical development. Victor's laboratory functions as what Hermetic magicians call a temple, a sacred space where the boundaries between material and spiritual realms become permeable, allowing for direct communication with divine consciousness. But here's what's really incredible. Victor's angelic visions appear during moments of crisis and creation, suggesting that his scientific work is actually a form of magical operation designed to manifest divine will in physical reality. The angelic figure that appears to Victor resembles traditional depictions of the Archangel Michael, the divine warrior who leads the battle between light and darkness. This suggests that Victor's creation of life is part of a cosmic spiritual conflict. However, Victor's approach demonstrates what Crowley warned against, attempting to invoke divine power without proper spiritual preparation and moral foundation. His obsession corrupts the magical working and turns divine creation into demonic possession. The way Victor's prayers become increasingly desperate and his visions more disturbing shows how authentic spiritual practice can become corrupted when driven by ego desire rather than genuine service to divine will. The most profound aspect is that Victor's HGA is trying to guide him toward the truth that creation requires love and responsibility, not just technical knowledge, a lesson he only learns through suffering and loss. Secret number 4. The Malachite dress and tower collapse. Reveal tarot symbolism. Elizabeth's striking green malachite dress and the dramatic tower collapse scene aren't just visual elements. They're demonstrating authentic tarot symbolism about spiritual transformation through crisis and the protective power of divine feminine wisdom. Malachite is known as the stone of transformation in occult tradition. It absorbs negative energy, facilitates deep emotional healing, and protects the wearer during periods of spiritual crisis and change. Elizabeth wearing malachite throughout the film shows her role as the transformative feminine principle that can heal the wounds created by masculine obsession and violence. Her dress literally makes her a walking talisman of protection and change. But here's what's really incredible. The tower collapse scene directly mirrors the tower card in tarot, which represents sudden revelation, the destruction of false structures, and the lightning bolt of divine truth that shatters illusion. In tarot tradition, the tower card appears when consciousness has built its identity on false foundations that must be destroyed before authentic spiritual development can occur. Victor's tower collapsing represents the destruction of his ego-driven approach to creation. The lightning that destroys the tower is the same divine fire that animates the creature, showing that the force of spiritual awakening can be both creative and destructive, depending on how consciousness receives it. Elizabeth's agency throughout the film, compared to her passive role in earlier versions, demonstrates the evolution of the divine feminine from victim to active participant in spiritual transformation. The most profound aspect is that Elizabeth's malachite dress protects her not through magic, but through the wisdom to recognize truth and make choices based on love rather than fear, showing that authentic spiritual protection comes from inner development rather than external talismans. Secret number 5. The blind man's isolation enables the creature's Gnostic awakening. The creature's time hiding near the blind man's home, learning through observation before revealing himself, demonstrates the classic Gnostic teaching about how spiritual awakening occurs through hidden knowledge transmitted outside official institutions. In Gnostic tradition, true spiritual education happens not in temples or schools, but in secret, between individuals who have achieved direct knowledge of divine reality. The blind man serves as an unwitting Gnostic teacher, transmitting wisdom through his daily life. The creature's self-education through books mirrors the Gnostic emphasis on personal revelation over institutional authority. He learns to read, think, and feel through direct experience rather than formal instruction. But here's what's really profound. The blind man's physical blindness represents what mystics call spiritual sight, the ability to perceive truth that's invisible to ordinary consciousness. His inability to see the creature's physical appearance allows him to respond to the being's essential nature. This scene reveals a crucial difference between Del Toro's version and earlier adaptations. In Shelley's novel, the creature's education is more philosophical. In the 1931 film, the monster remains largely mute and instinctual. Del Toro shows the creature developing genuine emotional intelligence and moral reasoning. The way the creature remains hidden while learning demonstrates the Gnostic principle of the secret school, spiritual development that occurs in the margins of society, away from the institutions that would suppress or corrupt authentic knowledge. The blind man's acceptance when the creature finally reveals himself shows how spiritual sight transcends physical appearance and social prejudice. he recognizes the divine spark within the creature that others cannot see. The most incredible aspect is that this relationship provides the creature with something Victor never gave him: unconditional acceptance and the recognition of his essential humanity, which becomes the foundation for his later capacity for forgiveness. Secret number 6. The creature's immortality. The creature's immortal nature in Del Toro's version isn't just science fiction. It represents what medieval alchemists called the philosophical stone, or elixir of life, the ultimate goal of spiritual transformation that grants eternal existence. In alchemical tradition, achieving immortality requires the perfect integration of opposing forces: spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. The creature embodies this integration, being both dead and alive, artificial and natural. But here's what's really disturbing. Del Toro shows that immortality without love and acceptance becomes the ultimate curse. The creature's eternal existence is meaningless suffering unless he can find connection and purpose. This represents a profound difference from Shelley's novel, where the creature vows to destroy himself in the Arctic, and the 1931 film, where the monster apparently dies in flames. Del Toro's creature must learn to live with his immortal condition. The creature's physical beauty combined with his inner torment demonstrates the alchemical principle that external perfection means nothing without internal harmony. He's achieved the alchemist's dream of perfect physical form, but lacks the spiritual completion that makes immortality a blessing. His immortality also represents what Gnostic texts call the burden of gnosis. Once consciousness awakens to divine truth, it cannot return to ignorance, and must bear the responsibility of that knowledge forever. The most profound aspect is that the creature's immortality becomes meaningful only when he chooses to use it in service of others rather than seeking revenge, transforming the alchemical curse into spiritual blessing. Secret number 7. Slaying the wolves. The scene where the creature slays a pack of wolves to protect the blind man and his family isn't just action sequence. It's demonstrating the spiritual principle of conquering the shadow aspects of consciousness that threaten innocent life. In Jungian psychology and occult tradition, wolves represent the predatory, instinctual aspects of the psyche that must be integrated rather than destroyed. The creature's ability to defeat them shows his evolution beyond mere survival instinct. The pack nature of the wolves represents what mystics call collective shadow, the group mentality that turns individuals into predators who attack anything different or vulnerable. But here's what's really incredible. The creature's protection of the innocent family demonstrates his transformation from monster to guardian, from destroyer to protector. He's literally conquering his own shadow nature by defending those who cannot defend themselves. This scene reveals the creature's relationship to society across different versions. In Shelley's novel, he becomes increasingly violent due to rejection. In the 1931 film, he's feared and hunted. Del Toro shows him choosing to protect rather than destroy. The wolves also represent the cycle of violence that has defined the creature's existence. He could continue the pattern of predation or break it by becoming a protector. His choice to fight the wolves shows his rejection of the victim-perpetrator cycle. The way he fights with both intelligence and compassion, killing only what threatens the innocent while sparing what doesn't, shows the development of what warriors call spiritual discernment. The most profound aspect is that by conquering the external wolves, the creature conquers the internal wolf, the part of himself that could justify revenge and violence. This victory makes his later forgiveness of Victor possible. Secret number 8. Forgiveness becomes the ultimate occult practice. The theme of forgiveness that culminates in Del Toro's ending isn't just emotional resolution. It represents what advanced spiritual traditions consider the highest form of magical practice, capable of transforming karma and breaking cycles of suffering. In esoteric Christianity, forgiveness is considered a divine power that literally changes the spiritual structure of reality. When consciousness forgives, it releases both forgiver and forgiven from the karmic bonds that keep souls trapped in cycles of harm. Del Toro's emphasis on forgiveness creates the most radical departure from earlier versions. Shelley's novel ends in mutual destruction, the 1931 film in the monster's apparent death. But Del Toro shows both creator and creation choosing reconciliation over revenge. But here's what's really profound. The film shows that forgiveness isn't weakness, but the ultimate expression of spiritual power. It requires more strength to forgive than to seek revenge, more wisdom to break cycles than to continue them. Victor's journey toward forgiving himself for creating the creature, and the creature's forgiveness of Victor for abandoning him, demonstrates what mystics call mutual liberation, when both parties in a conflict choose healing over harm. The way forgiveness transforms both characters shows its alchemical nature. It literally transmutes the base metal of hatred and guilt into the gold of compassion and understanding. This theme connects to the broader occult teaching that individual healing contributes to collective healing. When Victor and the creature forgive each other, they break a pattern of violence that could have continued indefinitely. The most incredible aspect is that Del Toro shows forgiveness not as forgetting or excusing harm, but as the conscious choice to transform suffering into wisdom and use that wisdom to serve life rather than death. Secret number 9, you're the monster. The moment when Victor's brother says, "you're the monster," isn't just dramatic accusation. It's demonstrating what Carl Jung called shadow projection, the psychological mechanism where consciousness attributes its own darkness to external figures. Throughout the film, society sees the creature as the monster while remaining blind to the monstrous aspects of their own behavior, the rejection, violence, and cruelty they show toward anything different or threatening. Victor's journey involves recognizing that he, not his creation, is the true monster, the one who brought suffering into the world through his obsession and then abandoned responsibility for the consequences. But here's what's really incredible. This recognition represents what occultists call shadow integration, the process of acknowledging and accepting the dark aspects of consciousness rather than projecting them onto others. The evolution of this theme across versions shows changing understanding of evil and responsibility. Shelley's novel presents both creator and creation as tragic figures. The 1931 film makes the monster more sympathetic than his creator. Del Toro shows that monstrosity is a choice, not a nature. The creature's own recognition that he has become monstrous through his actions, not his appearance, demonstrates the spiritual maturity that allows for genuine transformation and redemption. The way society's projection of monstrosity onto the creature reveals their own monstrous nature shows how shadow projection works. What we hate in others often reflects what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. The most profound aspect is that once both Victor and the creature recognize their own capacity for monstrosity, they can choose to become something else, showing that shadow recognition is the first step towards spiritual transformation. Secret number 10, the Arctic ending. The climactic Arctic sequence where the creature saves the ship from ice isn't just heroic action. It's demonstrating the ultimate spiritual teaching that redemption comes through service to others, even those who have rejected and harmed you. The Arctic setting connects directly to Dante's Divine Comedy, where the center of hell is not fire but ice, the frozen lake of Cocytus where Satan is trapped, representing the ultimate spiritual coldness and separation from divine love. The creature's movement from the ice toward the light in the final shot mirrors Dante's emergence from hell into the light of stars at the end of Inferno, showing the soul's journey from damnation to redemption through spiritual geography. But here's what's really incredible. The creature's choice to save the ship demonstrates what mystics call bodhisattva consciousness, the decision to serve others' liberation even when they don't deserve or appreciate it. This ending creates the most hopeful conclusion of any Frankenstein adaptation. Instead of mutual destruction or tragic death, Del Toro shows that even the most damaged souls can choose redemption through selfless service. The way the creature walks toward the light rather than into darkness reverses the traditional ending where he disappears into Arctic night. Del Toro's version suggests that spiritual evolution continues beyond individual suffering. The ship he saves represents humanity itself, the collective vessel that carries consciousness through the dangerous waters of existence. His service to the ship becomes service to the continuation of life and consciousness. The most profound aspect is that the creature's final act of service completes his transformation from artificial being to authentic soul. He achieves what Victor's science could never give him: genuine humanity through the choice to love and serve rather than hate and destroy. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is so much more than just another adaptation of a classic story. It's an authentic spiritual teaching about the journey from creation to redemption, from shadow to light, from isolation to service. Del Toro has taken Mary Shelley's philosophical masterpiece and transformed it into a complete guide to spiritual development, showing how consciousness can evolve from the darkest beginnings to the highest expressions of love and service. The film reveals that what we call monsters are often souls crying out for recognition, acceptance, and the chance to transform their suffering into wisdom. Both Victor and his creature represent aspects of human consciousness that must be integrated rather than destroyed. Most importantly, Del Toro shows us that no soul is beyond redemption, no mistake is unforgivable, and no suffering is meaningless if it leads to the wisdom and compassion that can heal not just individual wounds but the collective trauma of existence itself. This is why the film resonates so deeply with audiences seeking meaning in their own struggles with creation, responsibility, and the possibility of transformation. It speaks to the universal human experience of feeling like monsters, while longing to become something beautiful. The question isn't whether we're creators or creatures, monsters or heroes. The question is whether we're willing to choose forgiveness over revenge, service over selfishness, and love over fear, even when we've been rejected by the very world we're trying to serve. What other films do you think contain hidden teachings about spiritual redemption and the power of forgiveness? Have you ever experienced the kind of shadow recognition that transforms monsters into healers? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm always looking for new evidence of how consciousness can evolve through suffering into service. And if this video opened your mind to new possibilities about redemption, forgiveness, and the spiritual dimensions of classic literature, then you need to subscribe to Occult Cinema right now. I'm constantly discovering films that contain genuine wisdom about the deepest questions of human existence and spiritual development. The ancient teachings about creation, responsibility, and redemption never disappeared. They just learned to hide themselves in the stories we tell for entertainment. And the most incredible part? The spiritual transformation you need to move from monster to healer might be encoded in the very films that show us what it means to choose love over fear, service over selfishness, and forgiveness over revenge.